Look at any list of Zelda's best dungeons and you'll find the usual suspects. And rightfully so, these dungeons are the pinnacle of level design, game mechanics, and spectacle. What are usually overlooked on these lists, because they generally can't compete with the spectacle of their 3D counterparts, are the dungeons in the top-down games. But what the best top-down dungeons lack in spectacle, they more than make up for with unique level design, clever game mechanics, and challenge. And there's one in particular I've been thinking a lot about lately. So grab your Game Boys, shift your perspective, subscribe to the channel, and let's talk about one such overlooked dungeon in an overlooked game that is perhaps the best Zelda dungeon you've never played. In southwest Labrina, the world in Oracle of Ages, lies the Zora Seas. Beneath its rolling waves, Link encounters the village of the majestic Zoras and their monarch, King Zora. If you're familiar with Ocarina of Time, you'll immediately recognize the design of the Zora and their king, as well as their guardian deity, Jabu-Jabu, whose belly, also like Ocarina of Time, Link will enter in order to conquer a dungeon. Now, I brought up these Ocarina of Time references for two reasons, both of which have to do with the design of Oracle of Ages' penultimate and, in my opinion, best dungeon, Jabu-Jabu's belly. The first reason is because, like the designs of the Zora themselves, the interior of Jabu-Jabu's belly in Ages does its best to mimic the organic aesthetics of its Ocarina counterpart, given the limited hardware, with membranous floors and living walls, as well as a map laid out in the shape of a giant fish or whale. The second reason relates to the dungeon's main mechanic, specifically this room with 3 switches, each of which can only be activated by entering through the appropriate access point. As the owl statue says and the post-switch pressing text confirms, each switch allows you to either lower or raise the dungeon's water level, similar to Ocarina of Time's best dungeon. But the water temple comparisons don't end there, as Jabu-Jabu's belly and its associated puzzles are navigated by the Oracle of Ages equivalent of the hookshot, that being the switch hook, which, as its name suggests, doesn't just allow Link to grapple onto distant objects, but also to switch places with them. The dungeon item also follows in Ocarina's footsteps, that being the long switch, an upgrade to the switch hook that allows for a longer reach and therefore the ability for Link to switch places with things at a longer distance. Okay, so the dungeon recreates the living grotesquerie of Ocarina of Time's inside Jabu-Jabu's belly, mixes it together with the main mechanic of the water temple, and focuses its puzzles and navigation around an old item and upgrade with a new twist. The switch hook and long switch, all in a top-down view. But what makes it so great is how all these things interact, and what the dungeon doesn't tell you. First, when you enter the dungeon, you're, well, underwater, as is cleverly communicated by the dungeon's bluish tint, rippling screen, and Link's mermaid fins. Quickly you learn a few new restrictions. You can't use certain items, like the Cane of Samaria, and you can't push blocks, but you can swim over otherwise uncrossable gaps. Within the blue underwater sections, yellow-colored tiles or other conspicuous areas hint at light from rooms accessible from below. As you change the water levels, water becomes visually shallower, deeper, or even empty, each stage of which allows Link to access areas differently. Then there is the other owl statue, which hints at the true nature of a raised portion of the dungeon. It isn't actually fixed in place, but adjusts alongside the differing water levels, eventually becoming a key hinge in progression. But what makes all this work, what drives the fun and the challenge, and what separates it from its Ocarina of Time counterparts is the fact that it's not 3D. The clear restriction of the top-down perspective and not being able to directly see how water levels always relate to other floors forces the player to create a mental map that, in conjunction with the actual map, they must constantly refer to in order to make their way to the boss, whose key is cleverly gated behind a final corridor of locked doors. The keys to which can only be found if you completely understand and take a bit of a logical leap with the changing water level mechanic. Yes, there are opportunities to wander or become stuck, but in my view, that's what makes a dungeon fun. Plus, the boss, though easy once you figure it out, has a clever gimmick. Oracle of Ages, based on its association with Nehru and her association with wisdom, is one of the more puzzle-intense games in the Zelda franchise, top-down or otherwise, and Jabu-Jabu's Belly is a great example of how familiar mechanics, utilized in a different perspective with expertly crafted level design, can create a fresh, unique, and challenging dungeon. As many longtime fans of the channel know, I have a bit of a soft, mushy spot for challenging water-based dungeons like Jabu-Jabu's Belly. I don't want to spoil this dungeon too much, but I did want to sing its proper praises, so that if you haven't already, you'll play Oracle of Ages. If not for this challenging dungeon, then at least for baby Jabu-Jabu. And if you have played it, what did you think? Thanks for watching.